Gifu Prefecture, Japan, an hour north of Nagoya. The road winds between rice paddies and wooded hills, old farmhouses with gray-tiled roofs, shrines half swallowed by the trees, and then, around a bend, a village, Tomikacho, 6,000 people, spread through a quiet valley, one of those rural corners modern Japan simply forgot. No towers, no neon, just low houses, a small station on the line, and the silence of the countryside. In March 1999, the town council opened a new building, 4 floors of concrete, 24 apartments, white walls, metal balconies, the kind of municipal block they were putting up by the hundred across the country, 400 million yen to build, and a rent so low it was almost a gift. 30,000 yen a month, barely $200. For young couples looking to settle down, it was a windfall. Within a month, every apartment was taken. The moving trucks came one after another. Families settled in. Children ran through the new corridors. Normal life began. At least, that's what they thought. Because something was already waiting in those walls. Something that hadn't come with the building. Something that was there before. Something that should never have been woken. And over the next 18 months, this ordinary building in the Japanese countryside became one of the most documented poltergeist cases in the country's history. It made the national front pages. It pulled in television crews, parapsychologists, and more than 30 self-proclaimed mediums, and it split the experts right down the middle. This is the Tomikacho poltergeist. The first signs came in the spring of 1999. Sounds. Not the normal sounds of a new building, not settling foundations, not doors that don't quite fit, sounds that had no business being there. On the 3rd floor, a young mother woke up every night. Something was cracking inside the walls. A dry snap, like wood splitting, but the walls were concrete. On the 2nd floor, a couple heard footsteps above their heads, heavy, regular, crossing the ceiling from one end to the other. There was nothing above them, just the roof, just the sky. Other residents heard other things. A glass bottle rolling across a floor when there was no bottle. A saw when nobody was doing any work. A hammer in the middle of the night when everyone was asleep. And there was one sound that came up again and again. Footsteps in the corridor. The soft slap of slippers. Like someone running, like a child playing. Except there was nobody in the corridor. People started looking at each other differently. Everyone suspected their neighbor. The complaints piled up with the head of the Residents Association, a man in his 50s who lived on the ground floor, apartment 101. He wrote everything down. He talked to the families one by one. He compared what they told him, and then he realized something that stopped him cold. The sounds weren't coming from the neighbors. They were coming from everywhere and nowhere, like the building itself was making them. But buildings don't make noise for no reason. There had to be an explanation, a loose pipe, a construction fault, something logical. So he waited. He watched. He hoped it would settle down. It didn't. The summer of 2000 arrived, and the wet heat of the rainy season settled over the valley. That's when it exploded. It wasn't just sounds anymore. Now there were things happening, in front of people, things that couldn't happen. 2 a.m. A father is asleep when a humming wakes him up. It's coming from the bathroom. He knows that sound. It's a hairdryer. He gets up, crosses the hallway, opens the door. The hairdryer is sitting on the sink, blowing hot air, the motor running. He reaches out to switch it off. His fingers find the switch. It's already off. He looks at the cord, and the cord is hanging, in midair. It wasn't plugged in. He just stood there. He couldn't make sense of what he was looking at. Then the thing stopped on its own. The silence came back. He didn't sleep again that night. A few days later, in another apartment, a mother was making dinner. Her husband was watching television. Their daughter was playing in her room. Then, breaking glass. She ran into the living room. Her husband was standing there, white as a sheet, pointing at the cabinet. The glass doors had opened by themselves, and the plates had gone across the room. Not fallen, flown. Straight across the room, 6 feet, before they smashed into the opposite wall. They picked up the pieces without saying a word, and in among the fragments, they found something strange. A ceramic bowl, broken, but not the way things break. A rectangular piece had been cut out of it, cleanly, like someone had taken a blade to the porcelain. Nobody had touched that bowl. In another apartment, there was a little boy, 3 years old. He'd started behaving strangely, talking to himself in his room. No, not to himself. He was talking to someone his parents couldn't see. Oji-chan, he called him, the old man, and Oba-chan, the old woman. His mother asked him about it. Who were these people? And he answered the way small children do, like it was obvious. They were his friends. They came to see him. They played with him. She felt something cold go through her, but she talked herself out of it. Children have imaginary friends. It's normal. It's healthy even. That's what the psychologists say. Then it got more specific. One afternoon, he asked her to make extra cakes. For Oji-chan, he was hungry. Another day, she found him in the bathroom, leaning over the empty bath, his hands full of shampoo. He was washing Oji-chan's hair, he said. And then came the nights. One evening he refused to go to the toilet. He was crying, holding onto his mother's leg. Oji-chan is angry, he said. He's standing in front of the door. I can't go in. Another night, he woke up screaming. Oji-chan is coming out of the ceiling. His head is coming out of the ceiling. She stopped sleeping after that. She listened for sounds in the corridor. She watched the corners of rooms, and she wondered what her son was actually seeing. The other apartments were reporting the same kinds of things. Taps turning themselves on, showers starting in the middle of the night, television switching channel, always to channel 4, like something had chosen, fans running when they weren't plugged in, and everywhere that feeling, something watching, something waiting. Out of 24 families in that building, 15 were reporting phenomena. 15. Not 1 or 2. By the end of that summer, it wasn't a place to live anymore. It was something else. A cage. The head of the association kept a register. Every evening he wrote down what people told him. At first, it was a few lines a week. By September 2000, it was pages a day. The list is dizzying. The sounds, always the sounds. Cracking in every apartment along the east side. Footsteps on the ceiling, regular, almost mechanical. Sounds nobody could locate, that seemed to come from inside the walls. The objects, kitchen drawers sliding open, shoe cupboards unlatching in the night, keys turning up where nobody left them, and a curtain that opened in front of a witness, not all at once, in 4 stages, slowly, deliberately, like someone was pulling it. The appliances, the hairdryer wasn't a one-off, fans running unplugged, televisions turning themselves on, a gas hob that lit itself while nobody was in the kitchen. The mother found it by the smell. A few more minutes and that apartment could have gone up. The water, taps running, showers starting. One woman came home to a flooded bathroom, the floor soaked, the towels wet, when nobody had been in there for hours. And then the things that make no sense at all. A man working in his living room watched a can of juice lift off the table and cross the room in a curve before it hit the wall. A woman felt someone tap her on the shoulder. She turned around. Nobody there. Drawing pins came out of the walls, not fell, jumped. And out on the balconies, something quieter. The plants died, like something was pulling the life out of them. One man brought a compass out onto his balcony. The needle started turning, not to north, in circles, and it didn't stop. The president put his pen down and looked at his notes. This wasn't a neighbor problem. This wasn't a construction fault. This was something else. The noises were bad enough. Then people started seeing things. The first one was a woman. A man was coming home late. He was climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor when he saw her. A figure on the landing. A woman in white clothing, long black hair, hanging down over her face. He stopped. He blinked. She was still there, not moving. She wasn't looking at him. Or maybe she was. He couldn't see her eyes. And then she was gone. She didn't walk away. She didn't turn. She just faded, like an image dissolving. He stood on that step for several minutes before he could make himself keep going. Others saw her too. Always the same woman, dressed in white, black-haired, on the stairs, in the corridors, by the bike shelter, sometimes standing still, sometimes walking, but never a sound, like her feet weren't touching the floor. She looked about 30. She looked sad. She looked like she was searching for something. Then there were the shadows, dark shapes caught out of the corner of an eye, silhouettes crossing rooms when nobody was looking straight at them, black masses that seemed to sit in the corners of the apartments. A man on the 4th floor described something that had been with him for weeks, a presence in his bedroom. He couldn't really see it. He could feel it, something huge, filling the space floor to ceiling, watching him while he slept. He started sleeping with the light on. It changed nothing. The president couldn't take any more. People were coming to him every day, some of them crying, some wanting to leave, some who hadn't slept in weeks. One couple had walked out of their apartment and were sleeping at their parents' place while they looked for a way out. Something had to be done. He wrote to the town council. The building was theirs. It was their responsibility. He described all of it, the sounds, the objects, the apparitions, and he asked them to do something, anything. The answer came back a few days later. The official explained, with all the detachment of Japanese administration, that the town couldn't organize purification ceremonies or exorcisms. The Constitution guarantees separation of religion and state. A public body can't fund religious activity. The residents were free to call a priest or a monk themselves, at their own expense. He crumpled the letter in his hand. 400 million yen to build the place, and not 1 yen to help the people living in it. So they pooled their money and called in a Shinto priest from a sect that specializes in purification rites. In September 2000, he came to look at the building, and what he said stopped them cold. Here, he said, about 30 years ago, a woman hanged herself. Here. The older ones looked at each other. They remembered. During the oil crisis in the 70s, a mother had taken her own life in this neighborhood. She had a child in primary school. Nobody ever understood why. Her soul was never laid to rest, the priest said. She's still here. And she isn't alone. In October, they held a purification ceremony. The priest came back with his assistants. They set up an altar outside, lit the incense, said the prayers. Everyone stood in a circle with their heads down, hoping it would be over. It went on for hours. At the end, the priest said the woman's spirit had been calmed. So they put up a memorial stone where he told them to. A carved stone, an offering, a way of saying, "We haven't forgotten you." For a few days it eased off. Then it came back, worse than before. And this time, the whole country was about to find out. On the 13th of October, 2000, 2 days before the ceremony, the big regional paper ran an article about the haunted building in Tomikacho. Evening edition, sober, factual. It described what the residents were reporting and how the council had turned them down. The phone started ringing that same evening. Journalists, producers, magazines, and then news station called. News station was the most watched news program in Japan. TV, Asahi. Millions of viewers every night. The crew turned up with cameras and floodlights. They filmed the building. They interviewed the residents. They went into the apartments and filmed the glass cabinets, the hairdryer, the children's rooms. The report went out live, and during the broadcast, nothing happened at all. It didn't matter. The damage was done. Tomikacho, an anonymous village in Gifu Prefecture, had just become legend. And then the madness started. Within days, the village was overrun. The journalists first, Fuji TV, Nippon TV, TBS. Every national channel sent a crew. The weekly magazines sent their best reporters. Even Mu, the occult magazine, announced a full investigation. Satellite trucks parked outside. Floodlights on the white facade, day and night. Cameras following anyone who dared step outside their door. "Did you see anything last night?" Can you describe the sounds? Are you frightened to sleep in your own home? The residents were exhausted and scared, and now they were a spectacle. Some refused to talk. Others told everything: the plates, the hairdryer, the little boy who talked to ghosts, and every word fed the machine. But the journalists weren't the only ones coming. The mediums arrived. 2 or 3 a day at first, then 5, then 10. Within weeks, more than 30 people had turned up calling themselves sensitives, clairvoyants, exorcists, shamans. They came from all over Japan, some in Shinto robes, some dressed as Buddhist monks, and some in suits and ties, offering modern clairvoyance, scientific parapsychology. Every single one had a theory, and every one of them wanted to be the one who solved it. A television clairvoyant, a household name in Japan, walked through the building, closed his eyes, concentrated, and gave his verdict. "I see warriors," he said. "Samurai. Soldiers from the Sengoku period. They've been wandering here for centuries. They don't know they're dead." The press wrote it all down. And to be fair, the hill just north of the building had been a strategic position during the civil wars of the 16th century. Oda Nobunaga camped there during a battle. Men had certainly died in those fields. But the next medium saw something else entirely. "This is an old execution ground. Hundreds of men were beheaded here. Their souls want revenge. I see a blacksmith, a swordsmith. He was killed by his own blade. Somebody tested it on him. It's the curse of Nobunaga's son. He died badly, and his spirit is still in this land." And it kept going. It got stranger. There are Portuguese missionaries buried here. 2 Jesuits from the 16th century. They're asking for bread, wine, and a Bible. This is a path of the dead, a spirit line running from a shrine to a cemetery. They built across it. They've blocked the souls. Thousands of cattle and pigs died of cholera in this region. These are their spirits. They're aborted children, Mizuko. They're looking for their mother. A ninja was killed here with shuriken. That's why the plates fly. They're following the path of the throwing stars. The president wrote all of it in his register. Page after page of contradictions. Warriors, blacksmiths, missionaries, ninja, and cattle, dead of cholera. Every one of them had their own version, and every one of them, naturally, offered their services to exorcise the place, to calm the spirits, to fix it. For a price? Most of them worked for free, for the publicity probably, but not all. One of them asked for 1,000,000 yen per exorcism, around $7,000, to say some prayers and burn some incense. The president showed him the door. The building turned into a battlefield. Talismans went up on every door. Ofuda, those strips of white paper covered in sacred characters, the ones people hang to keep spirits out. Every medium who came through stuck their own on. Some doors had a dozen of them, layered on top of each other. Strange symbols appeared on the corridor walls. Buddhist mantras, Shinto invocations, characters nobody could read. And the residents had no idea who to listen to. One medium told them to put salt in the corners of every room. The next one said salt was useless and they needed incense. The one after that said incense attracts spirits instead of repelling them. And then there was the stone. The memorial they'd put up for the woman who hanged herself became an argument in itself. Some mediums said it was essential, that it was channeling her spirit, that it needed offerings, flowers, sake, rice balls. Others said the exact opposite, that the stone was a magnet for low-level spirits, that it was pulling wandering souls in from the whole region, and that it had to be destroyed immediately. That argument went on for weeks, and at the end of the year, 2000, a famous television medium ordered it destroyed. 2 of the residents did it. They took sledgehammers to the stone until it broke apart. The next morning, the president could barely stand up. His back had gone. Lumbago, the doctor said, from the effort of breaking the stone. Or something else, the more superstitious ones said. And in the middle of all that noise, somebody decided to try something different. Hideyuki Kokubo was a parapsychologist, not a self-declared medium, not an amateur ghost hunter, a researcher attached to an institute that studies these phenomena with scientific methods. He'd published in peer-reviewed journals. He worked with instruments, not crystal balls. When the case broke, He contacted the Residents Association himself. He offered a proper investigation. No exorcism, no theories about samurai or Portuguese missionaries, just measurements, data, facts. The president said yes, with relief. Finally, someone who didn't claim to have all the answers. From the 15th to the 17th of November 2000, Kokubo and his team moved into the building. They brought magnetometers to measure magnetic fields, radiation detectors, infrared cameras, temperature and humidity sensors, audio recorders. For 3 days, they went over the place room by room, measured everything, recorded everything, logged every anomaly. And what they found is genuinely strange. The radiation detectors showed nothing. Background levels, completely normal for the region. But the magnetometers picked something up. Low-frequency signals, below 20 hertz, too low for the human ear. Could infrasound explain what people were feeling? Some studies say it can. Anxiety, nausea, even visual hallucinations. But that wasn't all. On the 16th of November at 2 a.m, the instruments logged an anomaly. A brief, intense electrical signal, no explanation for it. Kokubo checked the data. The signal was real. Something had caused a sudden spike in the measuring circuits, like an unknown source of energy had passed straight through the building. He asked the residents about it, and one of them told him something that stuck. The sounds, he said, often happened at the same minute of every hour, not always, but often enough. Like something was working to a schedule. Kokubo wrote it down. A cycle like that suggests a mechanical cause, a pump switching on, a heating system, something you can measure. They checked. There was nothing. No equipment in that building ran on that cycle. Nothing could explain the regularity. Meanwhile, an acoustic specialist went through the recordings, and some of it, he said, does have an explanation. Water hammer. The shock you get in the pipes when a tap is opened or closed too fast. It travels through a whole building. That could account for the hammering. Thermal expansion. The block was built in winter, prefabricated. Concrete panels assembled in the cold, expand in summer heat. The friction makes them crack. But even he admitted it didn't cover everything. The plates crossing a room. The hairdryer with no power. The woman on the stairs. That's something else. In 2005, Kokubo published his conclusions. Careful, measured, scientific. He identified 3 kinds of factors. First, psychological. Fear spreads. Once the first resident started talking about strange noises, everyone else started listening, watching, reading meaning into every creak. Expectation amplifies perception. And then the media arrived, and they were living under floodlights, being asked every single day what they'd seen. How do you not end up seeing ghosts? Second, physical. The building genuinely did produce unusual noise. Prefabricated construction, thermal expansion, water hammer, the infrasound the magnetometers picked up, all of it adding up to an environment that puts people on edge. And third, and this, is where he went somewhere more controversial, parapsychological factors. Some of it, he admitted, doesn't fit in the first 2 boxes. The objects that moved, the appliances running without power, the electromagnetic readings. Maybe, he suggested, this was RSPK, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, the theory that people under extreme stress can unconsciously project energy that moves objects and disturbs electrical equipment. Not ghosts, the residents themselves, or one of them, doing it without knowing. It's a seductive theory. It's impossible to prove. But it does offer a natural explanation for something that looks supernatural. And his conclusion was careful. Tomikacho was probably several things at once: psychology, physics, and maybe something else, all tangled together into a perfect storm. The truth, he said, is out of reach. After the last exorcism, at the end of 2000, it started to fade. Not straight away, not completely, but gradually. The sounds got rarer. The objects stopped moving. The apparitions stopped. In 2002, the president logged the last incident, a single crack in a wall. Nothing like flying plates and possessed hairdryers. And then, nothing. It went back to being an ordinary building. People got on with their lives. The children grew up. The journalists went looking for a story somewhere else. The mediums went back to their private clients, and the village sank back into the anonymity it never should have left. So what stopped it? The exorcisms? All those prayers? The memorial stone, or breaking it? Or maybe it just ran out. Poltergeists, in the research, often follow a curve. They start quietly, build over a few months, then decline and disappear, like a storm blowing itself out. Or maybe someone moved away, because if it really was unconscious psychokinesis, then the source leaving ends everything. Nobody knows. Nobody ever will. In 2016, a journalist who specializes in these cases decided to go back. 16 years later, a generation on. He went to Tomikacho, he found the building, he knocked on doors, and nobody knew anything. The people living there weren't the ones from before. Every witness had moved or grown old or died. The president who kept the register had passed away a few years earlier. He asked the new head of the association about the poltergeist. What poltergeist? The man said he knew nothing about it, said he wasn't even aware anything had happened in that building. The journalist didn't believe him. How do you not know about something that made the national front pages, that pulled in dozens of television crews, that marked the history of your own village? But he understood too. In Japan, a haunted property loses its value. Nobody wants to live where someone died, still less in a building famous for its ghosts. Maybe the silence was just survival. So he tried a different approach. He talked to the neighbors instead, the people in the houses around the building, and they remembered. The journalists were hell, one old man told him. They camped outside our houses. They threw their rubbish everywhere. We spent weeks cleaning up after they left. An old woman told him something else. She'd had a friend in that building at the time, a friend with a little boy. The child talked to ghosts, she said. An old man and an old woman. He played with them. He washed their hair. My friend was terrified. She got out as soon as she could. The story of the boy, confirmed 16 years later by someone who had nothing to do with any of it. The case had become legend. In 2022, a Japanese director decided to tell it, a veteran of horror films. He'd seen the reports at the time, read the articles, gone through the accounts. He called it Building N, a fiction, loosely based on what happened. A young woman terrified of death, trapped in a haunted block with a group of students filming a documentary. The film takes liberties. It adds a cult, ritual murders, twists straight out of Midsummer. The building in the film is abandoned, not lived in. The phenomena are bloodier, but some details come straight out of the accounts from 2000. The white shapes on the balconies, the sounds in the walls, that atmosphere that never lifts. The reviews were bad, incoherent script, scares that don't land. It didn't matter. The film exists. And it reminded the country that something strange happened in a small village in Gifu Prefecture at the turn of the millennium. The building is still standing at the side of its country road. 4 floors of white concrete, 24 apartments. Families who live there, come home there, sleep there. And maybe some nights, something still walking in the corridors. Tomikacho, like most of these stories, can be read 2 ways. The first way belongs to the rationalists. A new building with construction faults, sounds you can explain with physics, thermal expansion, water hammer, infrasound, stressed people reading the supernatural into every creak. And then, a media circus that turned a handful of minor incidents into collective psychosis, the nocebo effect, on the scale of an apartment block. 15 families talking each other into it until they saw it. And when the attention moved on, when the cameras left, when the medium stopped coming, it all conveniently stopped. Case closed. The second way belongs to the believers. A woman hanged herself on that land 30 years earlier. She never found rest, and when they built on the place where she died, she woke up, and she wasn't alone. Soldiers from the Sengoku era, maybe. Anonymous victims of a violent past. Forgotten souls that found a vessel in a brand new building. The phenomena were real. The plates really flew. The hairdryer really ran with no power. A 3-year-old really did see something the adults couldn't. And the exorcisms worked. Not instantly, not perfectly, but gradually. The prayers calmed the dead. The stone, and then breaking it, released something, and the quiet came back. Between those two readings, the truth stays out of reach. Maybe Kokubo was right. Maybe it was several things at once: psychology, physics, and something else. Maybe there is no simple answer and no box this story fits into. What we do know is that for 18 months, something abnormal happened in a small Japanese village. 15 families lived through things they couldn't explain. The biggest media outlets in the country came to document it, and scientists recorded signals they couldn't account for. And today, the building still stands at the side of its road, white, silent, ordinary. The people living there say they know nothing about its history. Maybe that's true. Or maybe some nights when the wind comes in off the Sea of Japan and the rice paddies move in the dark, they still hear footsteps in the corridor, the soft slap of slippers. Like a child running, like someone searching, like something that never really left.